Okay, everyone, did you all bring the good book? No? Darn. Well, of course, the spiritual vision, 2020 spiritual vision, is the Centers for Spiritual Living theme for this year. Isn't that appropriate? And for January, it's about getting grounded. And the reason we are getting grounded is that January is typically the month, the very first month of the year, where we review the basics of our teaching, Science of Mind. And so this is loosely based on chapter 3 of the Science of Mind, which has come to be called the textbook. And this one is about what it does. So today is about love through law. This is not the first time you've heard this, is it? We know that we court the presence. Ernest suggested that we court the presence and direct the law. Because we know that the essence of love and wisdom, everywhere present, it is universal and it is particularized within each of us, that wonderful presence is always there. What's our part? It's to open our heart in order to experience it. We don't have to call God in from somewhere. We don't get on our knees unless you really want to do that and beg that some sky god come into our lives and make things better. Sometimes it can feel like we want to just surrender to something bigger than we are. And you know what? That's a good idea. But it's a new way of looking at it. It is not the old way of thinking there is some great being up in the sky that needs to be appeased. It's more about remembering who we are, remembering that this divine essence everywhere present is to be courted, courting the presence. Isn't that a beautiful phrase that he used? It simply means becoming aware, sitting quietly enough to let the outward world go away long enough for us to get back to reality with a large R. Now, have you noticed we experience enough of the small R reality? We've been doing enough of that, and it doesn't mean we're ever going to stop, but the truth is we want to come back to the awareness, as Ernest Holmes said, love rules through law. Love is the divine givingness. Love is the way. Love is spontaneous. Law is impersonal. Love points the way, and the law makes the way possible. So as we court the presence, we direct the law. The more empowered we feel by being one, with all of the strength and power and love and wisdom and intelligence of the universe, the more effectively we direct the law for good in our lives. Because isn't it true that the law is always at work within us? It's the law of cause and effect. It's the law that Jesus taught us about, sowing and reaping. It is done to us according to what we're planting in our minds. It is done unto us according to our beliefs. So we utilize the law most effectively when we first understand that the spirit of love is the truth, and it embodies all of us as we open ourselves to it. The divine requires the human. Did you ever think about that? You probably have. I think I may have mentioned it a couple times, that it requires the human through which to express and celebrate itself. Have you thought about how necessary you are to the universal scheme of things? Take just a minute and breathe in. I am an instrument required by the divine mind and heart of God to do my part here on earth to make it a beautiful place, bringing heaven to earth. I get to be a part of that. Now, you don't have such great responsibility that you have to do it by yourself. If that were true, I'd say, see ya, you do it. We're all doing it individually, and we're working together to bring a greater dream to bear on the earth. It's our responsibility to connect with Source. It's our joyous responsibility to do that. It's our responsibility to refine our instruments. Our persona, it's the word that the Greek actors used. It was a mask that they wore. And they were, whoever they were portraying, they were speaking their lines through that mask, the persona, from which we get what? Personality. That we are the instrument, the physical emotional and mental. That's the triune nature of the persona. And we want that persona to be healthy and strong and well, and then surrender to spirit to flow through it. We have the responsibility. I have the responsibility to refine my instrument. And I do that through meditation. And I do it through doing my best. We always do our best to keep our thoughts in the highest possible place. Not to allow ourselves to be pulled down into the events of our lives or of the world itself. As you know, it's only temporary. You know, in the New Testament, we read, so many times we read, and it came to pass, and it's important for us to think of that in this way. It did not come to stay. Came to pass. Things change out here all the time, they're supposed to. But infinite mind and the infinite heart of God are changeless. So that's where I want to continue to go. That's where I want to get my good information. I want to invite the holy, the sacred, to express in everyday, commonplace activities. I want it to express in my relationships. I want it to express in the work that I do, in the joyous expression of aliveness that we're all here to have. We were not designed to live in poverty. We were not designed to live in oppression or limitation of any kind. I think it's time that the whole human race begins to understand that. We weren't designed to live in any kind of lack or limitation. And yet there it is. It exists. It wasn't ordained. None of it was ordained by God. And yet human beings experience these things. And remember what Einstein said? Oh, so many wonderful things. But he said, we cannot, say it with me if you remember it, we cannot solve our problems at the same level that our thinking created them. It's the human thinking, the only human thinking. Because humans are great. Don't you like, I enjoy being a girl, that kind of thing. It's wonderful to express our humanness and to experience it and to love it and to embrace it. But it's even more wonderful to know that there is a divine expression of life moving through all of the humanity that we are. We are spiritual beings. And this human experience gets better and better the more we remember it. So we need to solve those problems on a spiritual level. Infinite wisdom always has the answers. We don't always have the answers. Oh, we have some good ideas about how we can do something by our own hand, and I can do this and I can fix that. That doesn't work so well for me. I don't know about you. Works better for me when I surrender to the presence of wisdom within me. And say, guide me, show me the way. And when we do, that erroneous human thinking that comes from fear, anger, not enough, it's got to be replaced with a spiritual view. And that's when we get to put our God goggles on as quickly as possible. See as God sees. Can you imagine the divine allness, seeing anything less than good? And it is good. And it is good. That's how the universal mind expressed all creation. Not only first bringing in the creation that we see and walk through and experience every day, ourselves, all beings, but as it continues to express beautiful new ideas, beautiful new forms. And we're part of that. We're co-creators. And so, as we court the presence and direct the law, we think of all the beautiful people who have done this. Gandhi, for instance, the most peaceable, wise, clearest, non-violent, loving being that we can imagine, who blessed the person who shot him as he was dying. Wow, That's a big order, isn't it? I have a sense that I don't know exactly what Martin Luther King did at that moment of his dying, but I would imagine, since he was about love and nonviolence and justice and oneness, I would guess he probably was also in that place. He definitely courted the presence. He came as a man of peaceful nonviolence, bringing love and utilizing the law of mind actively to make positive changes. We act in the world to do what we feel is ours to do most appropriately when we have first been divinely informed. What is mine to do? Am I to march somewhere? Am I to treat for an hour each day? Am I to read? Am I to gather with like-minded people who are ready to find more deeply spiritual solutions to things? Inquire within first. We inquire within so that we know that love is fulfilling this beautiful expression of law which only knows to serve. It is obedient to what is planted in it, just as the soil is to the seeds that we plant there. Deepening our universal connection is a day-to-day activity, and then we're empowered to co-create. Ernest Holmes says, "We are surrounded by an infinite possibility. It is goodness, life, law, and reason. In expressing itself through us, it becomes more fully conscious of its own being." Wow! Again, think about how important, how significant, how essential each one of us is, because it allows the divine mind and heart of God to show up in the most beautiful ways through each of us, unlike everybody else's, and yet very much in alignment with everybody else's, when we recognize that there is one life, one heart, one mind, and that each of us is a very significant part of it. How essential each one of us is. Not to get to the point that we feel overly responsible, but that we feel responsible. Responsibility is what? The ability to respond to. And when I respond in love rather than in fear or in anger, I'm using that ability in the most beautiful way. It's too easy to get into the human stuff and go, oh yeah, well you too. You know what I mean, right? It's as if each one of us still has this really not okay kid within us. Anybody here? Where it's easy to go into a judgment, easy to go into a retaliation, a reaction instead of a response. We react on the human level, we respond on the spiritual level. I'm inviting us all, including myself, to respond to that divine love within us and bring it into every relationship and every activity, and thinking of every person that we may have had a challenge with. And in having a challenge with another person, we are forgetting that we are one in the oneness and with one another. And we begin to remember again. And when we do, we're doing this wonderful blessing class on Tuesday nights. And so we practice the blessing. We practice blessing people we love. We practice blessing people we really have a kerfuffle with. We practice blessing with someone we think maybe is ruining the world. We practice the blessing. Have you noticed, those of you who have been doing this, that sometimes when you're focusing on a person and really opening your heart to want only the best and the most beautiful and the wisest and the most loving for this person, that sometimes you can begin to go to another place and it becomes harder to do the blessing. Am I the only one? That's the time that I like to give thanks. That something's coming up that still needs to be healed in me. if I'm slipping off of the blessing and I'm coming into a little judgment, I say, thank you, because that's not what I want. That's not who I am. And I'm grateful to see that there is a place that's ready for healing there, so I can go back to an honest, true, authentic blessing. I need to bless myself too, don't you? Don't you think that we need to be honoring and nurturing and blessing ourselves with everything that we're moving through, whether it's sad or joyous, that we bless ourselves throughout the entire experience? The presence is deeply personal. Nearer than hands and feet, closer than breathing. What could be closer than breathing? The presence is very present. Very, very personal. The law, on the other hand, is completely impersonal. You know, if I drop this paper on the floor, it wouldn't be because I hadn't paid my gravity bill. It's just the law of gravity. If I am focusing too much on something that is unlovely, limiting, I will likely demonstrate something in my life that is not lovely. The law isn't angry with me. It's simply responding to my belief and what I have been focusing on, you know. Consciousness. It's all consciousness. Consciousness. What is in my consciousness? I won't ever ask you that, and don't ask me that, but I'll ask myself that. You know, in the olden days, in the early days of religious science, sometimes if somebody would come to church with a sniffle or something, someone else might go, "What's in your consciousness?" We don't do that. I ask myself, but I want to ask myself gently. I want to ask myself lovingly, what have I been focusing on that's not really at all what I'd like to have experienced? So the law produces faithfully after the impress of our thought. So we listen to the infinite peace and wisdom within us in meditation, for instance. That's a passive thing, and it's beautiful. It's receiving the inspiration. It's receiving the wisdom and the guidance. And then we follow the inspiration, and that's an active thing. Treatment, spiritual mind treatment is an active thing. Peace is greater than any chaos. I brought this again. I haven't shown it to you for a while. Can you see that? We start out with chaos on the top, and then it begins to morph until it ultimately becomes order. How can that happen? Only because order is a universal law and principle of everything. Order underlies what appears to be chaos. Now, do one want to live in chaos, or do one want to live in order? As we allow ourselves to let this morph into its reality, we all win. We all become more in the place of bringing heaven to earth, rather than living a hell on earth. And we do some of each, don't we? Over our lives, haven't we sometimes experienced that, you know, heaven is that which is forever and ever expanding, Uranos, that which is forever and ever expanding. We expand our joy, we expand our life, we expand our freedom. Hell is contracted, it's held in. These are not places, these are states of consciousness, and we've all experienced them. Which would you choose? Choose you this day. So, the peace is greater than chaos. The wisdom is wonderful. It contains truer answers than the intellect can ever possibly know. Spiritual mind treatment, or affirmative prayer, is the method here that we use to bring ourselves into alignment with truth and to actively co-create with the law once we have accepted and experienced that precious divine presence. And next week, tune in next week, because that'll be chapter 4, how to use it, and we'll actually be sharing the 5-step basic treatment. There'll even be handouts for you, for those of you who are new to it. And so next week it will be all about how to use it, and my topic will be living it. I was thinking afterwards, maybe I should have said living it up. That's better. Next week is living it up. Say with me, if you would, I dive deeply into Spirit love. I'm guided to use the law with wisdom and joy. And so, my beloveds, beginneth your lesson.